Hey friends, and welcome in to A Walk Through the Word, Daily Bread with Crystal Fry. I am your host, Crystal Fry, and I have to preface this episode with a warning. Be ye prepared. Whew! This week's guest conversation is one you are not soon to forget. My guest this week is Miracle Sims, a woman of many talents. In addition to being the owner of several business endeavors, she is also host and creator of the podcast and talk show God, Sex, and Love, and author of several books, including The Cultivation Period, A Single Christian's Journey. We talk about all the things, including being the daughter of an evangelist, trying to find loopholes to let us do what we shouldn't, reconciling our flesh with our faith, and of course, God, sex, and love. Yes, friend, all the emotions are welcome in this episode. I hope you enjoy the episode and be sure to check out the show notes to connect with Miracle on social media, visit her link tree where you can find all the things, and check out her daily dose of inspiration on God, sex, and love. All right, friends, here we go. God's word is powerful. The missing link is our identity in Christ. When we know who we are and who He created us to be, that is when we can truly walk in freedom. You are never alone. There is hope, and that hope is Jesus Christ. Miracle, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to the show. It is such an honor and a pleasure and a joy to have you here. I cannot wait for our audience to listen to this conversation because we've already had a fabulous conversation in our pre-recording session. I can't wait to let everybody else in on this. But for any of the audience who is not familiar with you, do me a favor and give them a little bit of an introduction. Tell them about yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me. So I am Miracle Sims. Usually I just start off my story with, hey, man, I'm a small town girl with big dreams. That pretty much sums me up. But long story short, I'm the daughter of an evangelist. And so I would say a little bit of that got into me throughout my life. I am someone that has a lot of different endeavors and things that I've done throughout life. I pursued a career in acting and whatnot. So I went to school for theater and things like that. But, I think there just was a lot that kind of pulled me in different directions in regards to like me feeling like I needed to share my testimony and story, as well as feeling like I needed to do things that I feel like God was leading me to do. Because even as I pursued my performance career, I would do different things and achieve different goals and they would all be great, but I always felt like I was missing something, like something was not complete about whatever I was doing. And I kept trying to go and reach, and I was always that person, even from a young age, always thinking about like the next step and the next step and the next step. And so now I'm finally in a place where I can say that I am content, like maybe too much sometimes, but maybe the Lord's like, hey, we still got stuff to do. But I'm glad that you finally trusted me. And so, yeah, I'm in this place now where, I do what I call hustling from home. I have my endeavors that I'm doing from home ever since 2020. One of my passion projects is what I call God, Sex, and Love. It's my talk show and podcast. There's daily inspiration. There's the weekly talk show. And since then, I've been able to just tap into so many other goals and dreams by finally taking that leap of faith and being like, allowing God to finally get this idea of God, Sex, and Love off the ground, which is a whole thing by itself. But, now I'm finally in this place where I feel like I don't feel that those things that I felt in the past in regards to like, feeling like something's missing and all that type of stuff. And I feel like I'm walking in my purpose these days, and I'm excited about what God is doing.
Well, I am excited about what God is doing too. And it's so refreshing to be able to have a conversation with someone who shares a similar journey and a similar path from the standpoint of how God has always been at the place of pulling us and tugging us and letting us know in his own way that there are things that he needs us to do. And while we have kind of floundered around in our space of trying to figure out what that looks like and
Yes.
how we're going to pursue that, but really being able to walk that journey into coming into where you now have that sense of fulfillment in what you're doing, because not only can you see the path, but you've actually gotten yourself on the path
Mhm.
and relinquished control of a lot of things, and just really allowing God to lead you and guide you down this path into where it is that he's taking you. So again, my listeners, get ready to have some fun conversation. It's okay if you laugh. It's okay if you cry. It's okay if you do all the things. Like, all the emotions are welcome here today.
Yes.
And we may touch on a lot of them. So be ye prepared.
Yes, be ye also ready. That's what my mom would always say.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, Miracle, my favorite question to ask our guest is a very simple one, and it sets the tone for everything else we talk about. How has your faith impacted your life?
Whew. So many things, man. Look, I can start so many places with that, honestly. Because again, with being someone that was raised in the church and had a mom that was an evangelist and things like that, obviously, it's always been a part of my life in regards to, you know, being there, right? Being this thing where it's like, okay, you're being taught about Christ, you know that there's the Bible, you know this, that, and the other. But I would say that as I got older and, especially this period in my life when I was living on my own, single, in my 20s, in a different state than my family, all this different stuff. I call that period in my life the cultivation period. Um, but my book is the cultivation period, the single Christian's journey. But I have to focus on that part of my life because I feel like that's when I was getting closer to God for myself, and like not
Yeah.
just going off of, but what I had been taught and my mom and all the things like that. It was me cultivating that relationship with God. The funny thing is, what led me to do that was my desire to be married, my desire to be a wife, and all these different things, to have a husband, look, to have sex. Here we go. Me being honest. But yeah, those were my desires and whatnot. But I knew what I was supposed to do, what I wasn't supposed to do. And I was struggling with that because, I'm human, like, everybody else. And again, there's a lot of different things again in my past that I kind of had to deal with and whatnot to get an understanding of, like, okay, why am I the way I am? What is it that I really want? And what do I need to do to get to what I want? And so that's a lot of what was going on during that time. About at least maybe like 5 years that I was down in Florida, kind of living the single life, doing my thing, figuring things out, getting close to God. And so, how does it affect my life? It affects my life in so many aspects because, you know what, a lot of the I'm telling you, there's so many things to tell you, but like, if I keep thinking about that particular time in my life, um, it was something I struggled with because it's like I was feeling like, Lord, why do you have me caring about these things that you've said in your word when I feel like nobody else does, and because you feel alone, right? You feel like you're alone,
Yeah.
the only one. Even people in the Bible felt that. But but yeah, until you get around other believers and talk to other believers and fellowship how we're supposed to be doing, then you feel alone. And so I was asking those questions because, I mean, I don't feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I just don't feel like, I guess at that time I didn't feel like other 20 something year olds were thinking about the things that I was thinking about. You know what I mean? And it was like, and that's where my show comes from. That's where the name comes from. Because back when I first started on YouTube around that time, um, I was like, I'm just going to get on there and I'm going to share and I'm going to let people know that I'm out here too. And if anybody feels the way I feel, they can connect with me, X, Y, and Z. And one of my very first videos, I was telling everybody, look, I'm a Christian and I think about God, sex, and my career. And these things I think about all the time. if I'm not thinking about like something specific, like, if I'm not doing something specific, I'm thinking about those three things and it's driving me crazy because I don't know what to do with it as a single woman, and just going off and just saying all this stuff. And then it was like, I came back the next day or whenever I did the second video, I was like, okay, let me explain. It's not just sex. I'm thinking about the marriage, relationship, all that stuff too. But I'm just being open and I just wanted to get that out, rip the Band-Aid off that sex is a part of my mind,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it all the time because especially when I was because I held on to my virginity for a long time. I think I was in my 20s by the time I actually did the first time and whatnot. And so you know so again, see, faith playing part of that
Yeah.
because okay, there's a lot of things that played a part of that. I observed some friends of mine that got pregnant when they were in high school, and I was like, that's not something I want. I'm not gonna make that decision. I just knew that there were different like consequences to the action, so that would play a part as well. But yes, faith played a part as well because hey, I know what I'm not supposed to be doing. I've been taught, what I'm not supposed to do. Da 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 da. And so yeah, I did hold on to my virginity until my 20s. And I did like, try my best to kind of like live holy and then all these different things at the same time being this horny woman that's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I find a loophole? And
Can I find a loophole? Can I
yes.
find a loophole?
and asking God all those questions at that time and stuff. And so yeah, again, faith played a big part on like different crossroad moments in my life, different choices that I had over the years. Like, I went to the Bible to figure out like, okay, should I do this? Should I do that? And again, those are because those things were instilled in me at that younger age. If I'm honest and transparent, and again, this might be good, I don't know if it's too deep or not, but basically, I feel like it's important to tell this part of the story too. So maybe y'all can understand why I keep talking about sex and I was horny and da da da. So long story short, basically, not only during that, my younger years were the seeds of God and Christ and Bible and all that planted in me, but there were also seeds of sexual things that was planted. And that was due to being molested at a young age. I had to be at least like 3 or 4 or something along those lines. Now, the thing about that is that my situation, like I know kids, unfortunately, go through these type of things and it can be traumatic and horrific for them, right? For me, it wasn't that way. Like, it wasn't a situation where there was pain or like suffering in any aspect. It was just being introduced to these things at this young age when you shouldn't be introduced. You shouldn't be kissed in a romantic way at that age. You should not be encouraged to touch or touched. And you know what I mean? So I wasn't I thank God that I don't have the rape testimony or anything like that. But just because, for example, that my offender was my babysitter, a woman, and all these different things does not change that it affected the rest of my life, right? And choices and different things like that. And so I feel like it's just important to share that part because in the cultivation period, in that time when I was in Florida and single and trying to figure out like, why am I so horny? Why am I so frisky? Why am I out here just fooling around and blah, 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 blah. When at the end of the day, I know I want to be married. I know I want a husband. I know, like, why am I doing the things I'm doing? Why am I this way? And I had to think, I ended up just kind of looking at myself in the mirror and being like, go back, let's see. Why am I this way? And so when I thought back on my life and thought back at that time and stuff, I just was like, okay, I see now. When you're introduced to things at the younger ages, it just went with me throughout the rest of my life. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of things that were like residual effects from that. I mean, I grew up, masturbating from that young age and on up and stuff. There would be times where, I found myself, fooling around here and there, and stuff like that throughout from being young to older. The masturbation thing was kind of hard just because, at some point I would just do it to go to sleep. That's how often I was doing at the time and whatnot. So, and again, like these type of things affect people in so many different ways. I did, and I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend nobody. I'm just sharing my testimony about like what happened to me. So yes, because that, my first experience was a woman, I did grow up with thoughts, I did grow up with, trying to figure out like how I felt about women and everything like that. And I never acted on those type of things. It just would be the thing. And that's the crazy thing too. Like throughout life, I was going through different stuff or thinking these different things. And I never like said anything about it. Like I never even wrote about it in my diaries. At some point I started to keep diaries and I didn't even write about those thoughts. Um, and so I think it was like maybe around high school, maybe I was like ninth grade or something like that. When I finally told somebody about the thoughts, um, it became this big issue. And again, I write about it in my book. And I'm not trying to like, you know, look down on my parents or anything like that. It's just, some things might be a surprise to people. And, if they didn't know about it and whatnot. And it just was a lot that was going on at that time. And again, I don't know how much time we got. So I'm just going to say that basically it became an issue when I finally did verbalize it. So then I ended up telling my mom about everything because I just was like, well, this is what happened. And, X, Y, and Z, this is how I'm feeling, X, Y, and Z. And my mom, she prayed for me at the time, but that's kind of where it stayed. We never talked about it again. So I go to college, and and you live in life. I'm only living on campus, blah, blah, blah. And I end up in what I guess you would consider to be, even though we never did make it official or nothing, but it was a homosexual relationship. It was, because I was dealing with this other young lady. And so that was a crossroad moment for me because I had to decide, like, what are you going to do? Right. Because you know what you've been taught, but at the same time, you know how you feel, all that type of stuff. And so you asked me earlier, how did your faith, blah, blah, blah. So basically, I don't know how many other people do this, but what I did at the time was let me read the Bible for myself so I can see what they talking about, and so that's what I did. And so, there was just verses to me that stood out to be like, you know what, after reading this, I can't move forward in this aspect. And it was that as well as because I'm very much attracted to men folk. And there would be times where I was like imagining that she was a man. I was like, you know what? This probably ain't for you. You know what I'm saying? And so those were reasons why I just was like, and it was hard to do. And I'm not saying it's easy at all. It was hard to kind of let that relationship go because I felt horrible, like in a lot of ways. I felt like I was going to initiate stuff. It's all in my book, y'all. But anyway, I felt like I was the one that initiated things. And so I kind of felt bad because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know, because I haven't talked to her in a while. It's been years. But last I talked to her was years ago. I think she's still in the lifestyle. And I felt guilty about that. But at the end of the day, I know that people got to make their own decisions. Like I made my decision back in college. She could have made that the same decision. She didn't want whatever. So I can't take responsibility for the choice that she ended up making beyond what happened with us. But yeah, and so yeah, that was a crossroad moment for me. That was something where I was like, and I think back on that time so much now because like when I look at my son, you know what I mean? I'm like, man, like if I had just made a couple of different decisions in life, you wouldn't be here. And that blows my mind all the time. Looking at my, the product of my marriage, you know what I'm saying? It's like, a whole person wouldn't be here. And he's amazing. He's annoyingly adorable. That's what I call him. But he's an amazing kid, and I just, so anyway, I know, girl, listen, she's like, I might want to stop you because you going on and on. But I'm trying to answer your question.
There's so much in here, though. There's so much in your story.
Yes.
And it's amazing to see how we go through our human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what has happened to us, what our, every encounter that we have in our lives, especially in our early childhoods, they shape our perspective. They shape the lens through which we see the world. And I know that has impacted my life greatly. It is the reason, it is a cause for why I spent such a long time struggling with and really often being defeated by feelings of unworthiness and not being valued and not being loved, despite the fact that I had a husband, he's still here, but, despite the fact that I had family that loved me, that I had friends that loved me, despite the fact that I was surrounded by people who loved me, I had early broken relationships in my life. Like early in my childhood, the relationship with my father was broken early. And that was, due to divorce and things that happen afterwards. And there's I want people to understand that I don't cast blame because I am a firm believer that we do the best that we can with what we have in that time. And so I don't fault my parents for whatever. I'm grateful that God brought the two of them together to create me. As far as I can tell, if the only reason, and I'm sure there were others, but if the only reason my parents were brought together was to create myself and my sister, well then okay, they did their jobs. And okay, good. But the relationship that I had with my father early on in life reached a point where it became broken. And that, I had no idea that that would impact me so much throughout my life. He had no idea that would impact me so much throughout my life. And we view things based on our experiences and based on the lens that we have. And until we reach a point where we can start questioning, like you did, why do I feel this way? Why is this what I think about all the time? Why is sex and sexual feelings and why is all of that so prevalent for me? Until we start asking those questions, why is self-doubt so prevalent for me? Why is worry so prevalent for me? Why is any pick your poison? Why is this so prevalent for me? Until we start asking those questions, we're not going to be able to reconcile our flesh with our faith. And that is something that you have gone through. That has been a journey that you have actually gone through. You have come to this point where you're reconciling your flesh with your faith and understanding, this is what I feel, but now I need to get into the word and see, what does God tell me about that? But I really do like the way you were explaining that, and how I think that's the critical thing. We have to ask ourselves questions. We have to get to know ourselves well enough to ask ourselves questions. And we grow up, we're bombarded with all of these messages, right? All of the information that gets put into us. And for the kids today, for the teenagers today, for the little ones today, who knows what's going to be shoved in their face? I mean, come on, there's a lot, and it's not really great.
Mm-hmm.
And when we grow up with these images and these ideas,
mm-hmm.
and they're constantly fed, and that's the normal,
Mm-hmm.
that's the normal. We usually don't even know ourselves well enough to question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Because we're programmed. I mean, we're programmed.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to come to this place where you say, wait a minute, like, do I even know what I'm supposed to feel like? Do I even know what feeling good is? Do I even know what's healthy? What is, what I was created, how I was created to feel? Because listen, there's a whole book in the Bible about sexual relationships, okay? And they are created. He gave them to us to be beautiful and to be intimate and to be in this place where you are supposed to experience this glorious ecstasy.
Mm-hmm.
He did not create our bodies with as many pleasure points and different things like that. He didn't create our nerve endings to be that sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
If we weren't supposed to use them, and we are supposed to use them.
Yes.
But we're supposed to use them in the way that he intended.
Yes,
the
ma'am.
context is what matters.
Yes, ma'am. I'm glad you said that, because see, at that time, right, I was asking God, I'm like, well, and if I go back again, going back to the cultivation period now, we out of college, because let's go to the Florida days, because I was out of college then, and I had moved on my own, like right after college and all of that, right? So that 5-year period. And basically I was asking God to take the feelings away. I'm like, well, Lord, just take these things away. Like, why, if I'm not supposed to be acting on this or that right now, then just help me, you know what I mean? And all these things. And I just never felt it going away. Now, there were things I had to change, right? During that time, I did, challenge myself to try to stop masturbating and try to stop doing this and, doing that. And, hey, okay, I might need to cut off some of these friends with benefits and, all the little stuff that was going on at that time. Because it's, again, when you took that look at, I took that look at myself and was like, okay, I know what I want, right? And I see what I'm doing. And that right now, I see that if I keep doing what I'm doing, it's not going to give me what I want. So ultimately, and that's something that there was a church I was going to in Florida. It's called God's House Orlando. And one of the main things that the Pastor Sammy said that has just stuck with me all these years is that when you make God's wants your wants, you're going to get what you want. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, I was like, I'm just like testing it out, And so that was my time. I was testing it out and seeing and whatnot. And, so there was a lot of things that did kind of get changed around. I was doing things differently and trying my best to do things differently. Like I'm not perfect or anything else, but I will say that is one thing that I've noticed in regards to single women or just maybe just people in general that I don't know if everybody does. Like, I don't know if I just was very unique to do that, to be like, okay, looking at myself, look at what I want, look at what I need to do to change, try to do something differently, and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like because I was faithful in those places then, those things helped me to get to where I am now. Yes, in a loving marriage with a husband, and our annoyingly adorable son, Now, are we perfect? No, we're both still humans and whatnot, but I do feel like he's perfect for me. He's super supportive of everything I got going on and vice versa. Like, and, I couldn't be here doing the things I'm doing every day without him and his support and whatnot. And so, and honestly, he's the reason y'all got daily inspiration with me because I was going to either do maybe once a week or maybe once a month or something like that. And he was like, oh, successful people do it like every day. And I'm like, what? What can I even talk about every day? And that he's been my muse in so many ways since we met. There's so many different projects and ideas and things that I've created that was just kind of based on like one little thing he said that just kind of gave me this inspiration and whatnot. So the artist, he's, helping me with my artistry, but yeah, that's the thing. It's like, taking accountability, looking at yourself, making those changes, all that stuff is what, at least I could say that's what helped me get where I'm at. And that's what I would definitely share for other people to try to do as well. Because at the end of the day, again, like what I am seeing that is the more that I focus on God and his will and what he wants me to do, the more that I'm seeing my goals and dreams come to life. And at the end of the day, something that I don't know if I've learned it over this period of me doing the studies that I've been doing lately, but basically I'm just seeing that, at the end of the day, God, not only did he create everything, but he also created those goals and dreams and whatnot too. So those are his goals and dreams that he just downloaded it to you or me, to do, And so, again, if you really start looking at it that way and seeing that, what, at the end of the day, Lord, you made me for whatever the purpose and will that you made me for. I need to start walking in that. And I've just found so much peace and joy. And like I said, that contentment I can now feel to say that, what, I know God got me. And regardless of whatever my current situation is, and I can trust that he's going to lead me and guide me where he wants me to be. And that's all I'm doing right now. And it's crazy. I think we were talking earlier about how crazy it is to kind of be in a situation where, like for me, you know, I never was a 9 to 5 person, but I was like a gigger person. I was doing this gig, that gig, over here, this place, and stuff like that. So to be kind of quote unquote hustler from home and just being creative and doing my talk show and making books and all the stuff that I'm doing just like from home as a mom now and stuff, which that was crazy too, because I just there's just so much to say about my story. So I'm just like, I feel like I'm leaving things out, but there's just so much to tell y'all. But basically, I was kind of struggling with that when I became a mom, because I was like, when we were pregnant, I'm like, okay, what does this mean? Do I need to change my career? Like, I'm just an actor out here doing shows and, like, do I need to change my career? Like, do I need to do something different? Like, what, I need to figure out a way. And I was trying to figure out a way to like kind of work from home and stuff around that time before COVID, y'all. This is before COVID. And so, yeah, and then now to finally to be in this place where I am mostly working from home and I'm doing all the things I had dreamed about doing, where I'm like, it's just a very interesting place to be, and I'm excited. I got a lot of cool things in the works, and I'm excited about what God is doing, and I don't know what's next, but I'm just like, hey Lord, well, whatever you want to do, however you want to do it. That's where I'm at this point. I'm okay with that. And
And I
that took
love
a
that.
while to get there.
Yeah, like I love that because it takes we're really being honest and transparent here. It takes a lot to get to that point
Yes, ma'am.
in your life, in your faith, and depending on what you have experienced in your life up to this point, it may take a whole lot more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we need to have this very real understanding that God didn't create you to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
He knew full well. Okay, like from Jump Street, Adam and Eve, thanks so much, Preach. Like he knew from the beginning, he knew before then.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a surprise to him aren't perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a surprise to him that it's not, if you will go back and read, and I mean just read, not read to study, but just read like a novel, okay? Like read it like it's a novel, okay? Like you're just reading a story. Go back and read the story of David.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Go back and read the story of David. David, who was a little shepherd boy, who was the least of these, right? They didn't even consider him because he was out tending the flock. They didn't even consider him when they came looking for the next king. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the same David who killed the giant, okay, with two little stones. All right. This is the same David who went on to be a great king, to then be chased, and to then do this, and to then lust after somebody else's wife, and to have an affair, and to kill her husband, and to cover it up. And, I mean, like, this is the same David.
Yeah.
Whose line gave us Jesus.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So as we get into this place, and bless my church people, I love you. But as we get into this place where we start to believe that we are somehow better, my mom used to say this, and I am sure it's familiar to a lot of people, holier than thou, right?
Yeah.
This concept that, oh, well, I walk with Jesus. Okay, well, great. Jesus ate dinner with sinners and tax collectors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As we bring ourselves back into this state of being humble and saying, God, I know that you didn't make me perfect. You made me with some really interesting you made me with some really interesting personality characteristics. Like I won't call them flaws or defects because you gave them to me, so they're not a flaw and they're not a defect, but they're interesting,
Yeah.
and understanding that we have these different things for a reason.
Yes.
We're not created to be perfect, but what we are created to do is come back to him. That longing, that unfulfillment, that emptiness in our heart that we try to fill with, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but with anything, with shopping, with eating, with cleaning, with anything.
Yep.
What we're missing is that relationship with the one who created us.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I know people struggle like with, I guess, a couple of things that you mentioned there. Like one, I feel like people struggle with this idea that God knows, because it's like, oh, if he knows, then do I have free will? Yeah, you still got free will to choose X, Y, and Z. I mean, I feel like as long as you have another day, you can make the choice and make change and all these different things. And so um yeah, just because he knows what you're gonna do and has grace for that,
Yes.
doesn't mean that, you didn't have the choice, or that, you didn't make the decision to do X, Y, and Z. And I know, again, people are struggling with that because then they're like, well, I had somebody come on my live. I was, live doing the daily inspiration the other day. And well, first they started to like bringing up random verses, and I wasn't talking about any of the things that they were bringing up. And God gave me wisdom that day. He said, don't even talk about it. Don't even, just wait till you're done. Because I was like, well, I'm going to focus on what the Lord gave me this morning, and then I'll read your comments afterwards. Now, I thank God for the wisdom, because again, I come to find out that a lot of the verses didn't have anything to do with what I was talking about. Then two, it was like all these random statements like, well, why did your God this? And why did he kill people? And all these different things. And it's just like, what, did the people make the choice, or did he do that? Like, which one is it? Because, and I just kind of, you guys can probably go watch that live people too. I think it's kind of funny, but I mean, not trying to pick at the person, but it's just like, what are you trying to do? Like, are you trying to kind of, I mean, it just was trying to sow a seed of discord to get me off track, right? But anyway, but yeah, I mean, again, like people are struggling with the concept of hell and whatnot. Like, why would he put, throw people there? No, I think he's done everything right to make sure that we get the information, or that we don't go that route. I mean, I see several Bible verses is like, hey, don't do this. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, if you still make the choice to do it, and then the thing is, like, do you not think that there's going to be a consequence for the choice? I think about my consequences all the time. I told y'all about different crossroads moments in my life, and I got living proof of what, could have not been if, I had made some different decisions and whatnot. And so that's the thing. It's like, at the end of the day, just like in life and in, any other aspect, if you go do a crime, right, and you get caught, right, then there's probably going to be some repercussions for your actions. And did you have that choice to do the crime or not? Yes, you did. And if you did it, so that's the thing. It's like, and again, he sent Jesus, he got the Bible, he got, people out here sharing the word and doing, sharing the gospel and doing all of that. There's lots of ways to get the news. And so, it's just, I don't know, that's just one of those things. Like when you were saying earlier about like, I guess it just made me think about like free will and whatnot, and the things that we do and whatnot. But there was also something else you said a moment ago that I wanted to touch on, but I can't remember. But again, at the end of the day, if nothing else, I just really want people to be encouraged and inspired to know that at the end of the day, we can trust God. We can trust him with our life. He made us. He planned it all out anyway. And there's the old quote that's like, hey, if you want to make God laugh, tell me your plans. Like, I see that in real life, I've seen that in real life multiple times, where that's why I say at this point in my life, I'm just like, hey, Lord, what you want to do? Anytime I feel the transitions happening in my life, I'm like, okay, what we doing? I feel like I'm on the right track. There's a lot of things that like bring me that confirmation every now and then. Like every now and then I might get the people that say, hey, yes, you encouraged and inspired me, X, Y, and Z. But another thing that confirms things for me, that persecution, like with me telling you a minute ago about the random person, I don't even look at that as like that's necessarily negative anymore. I be thanking people like, oh, you showing me I must be doing something right. Thank you. I'm on the right track, because you're in good company when you get into persecution, y'all, whether you know that or not. It don't feel good, right? But Jesus got it, his disciples got it, and anybody else that had anything affiliated with the Bible and talking about Jesus got that type of, or got persecution in general in some way. So you're in good company, and at the end of the day, he got it under control. It's all his anyway. So,
and that's really something to remember, is that who said it? Somebody said this to me just recently, and I've heard it many times before, but essentially, like, the devil doesn't attack things that aren't important.
mm-hmm.
The enemy doesn't come for you while you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix, eating Cheetos.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the enemy doesn't come for you then, because what are you doing? Well, I mean, if you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix, eating Cheetos, like, I mean, that could be your rest period. So don't get me wrong. Like, I like Cheetos. That's why I said Cheetos, because I like Cheetos. Yeah. And I mean, occasionally I like Netflix, but
mm-hmm.
Everything has its time and its purpose. But if that is all you're doing, let me put it like that. If that's all you're doing is kind of existing through this time that you have on this earth, then you're not a threat.
Right.
You're not a threat. God has already won. Like, with the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, that battle is done. That question has been answered. The devil doesn't get to win, and he knows that. He's well aware of that. However, he's spiteful and he's petty, and I could give you a laundry list of adjectives, but I don't have to because you get the gist. He's still going to try to take as much away from God as he can.
Mm-hmm.
He can't win. So now it's his objective to take as much away as he can. And he doesn't have to get you to do something bad. He doesn't have to get you to commit murder. He doesn't have to get you to commit adultery. He doesn't have to get you to commit any of the other, ridiculous and terrible and tragic things that happen in our lives. He doesn't have to get you to do any of that. You know what he has to get you to do? Nothing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if you do nothing, if you Netflix and Cheetos, okay, if that's all you do,
right,
you are not doing what God is your life for. You are not doing wants you to not do anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when you are,
yes,
when you are doing something, know that he's going to start shooting those flaming arrows at you all day long. He's going to say, oh, girl.
Liz, look, we right here because like there's so many things right there with what you just said. Like one, I tell people, or at least what I'm learning is to, when you say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go out and do your will, just go ahead and start expecting that he's coming for you. At the end of the day, I know I had a dear friend, love, but they, were struggling with some different things and they were trying to make a decision and whatnot. And they're like, well, I tried and then, I got a temptation, X, Y, and Z, or they didn't call it a temptation, but to me, I look at it as a temptation. I'm like, that's what it is. At the end of the day, one, he's going to tempt you with things you like, right? You want to know how many Mr. Right Nows I encountered?
You don't want it.
No, you know what I'm saying? It's like, so yeah, you're going to get more temptations in that aspect, and it's how are you going to deal, or how are you going to deal with it? Are you going to trust God and continue to do what God wants you to do? Or are you going to lean into your own understanding, which we're not supposed to do, and and keep doing things your way, and then be like, oh, well, because, this door opened with this person, so, it's like, well, no, it's the funny thing too, when you were talking about, like, when you're not doing anything. Here's a funny thing. So I'll tell you about the cultivation period. There's some interesting things that happen. I don't know if you're familiar with like sleep paralysis and things like that. Are you familiar with that? So that kind of thing happened to me a few times while I was down there. And it was funny because I don't know if I had started YouTube at that time. I might have still just been thinking or whatever. I don't know. But all I know, there was one time in particular that it happened with me. And I felt as if the entity, whatever, was like covering my mouth, like, and telling me to shut up. And I just was like, I'm not even saying nothing. Like, what's going on? And then I just called on Jesus and, and whatnot. I had to do what I had to, because I couldn't move, or, that whole thing. If y'all not familiar with that, I'm sorry if I'm just throwing that out there at you. But yeah, you can't move. It's like I couldn't move, couldn't talk. All anything I could do was think Jesus for it to go, and then it went, and blah, blah, blah. But then lo and behold, like I noticed, like maybe like a few weeks after that, I had started a YouTube thing. And then now, years later, you see what I'm doing now. So I'm like, oh, I guess it makes sense now. You're trying to shut me up all the way back then. Honestly, you were trying to shut me up back in my childhood, because there was a lot of where I felt like growing up, I felt like I couldn't fully express myself. I felt like anytime I tried to say something or whatever, it always seemed to be like, I would call it like World War III. Like, I was like, why every time I say any, like, if I even say any little thing, or maybe it could just be an observation, it turns into this big mess where I have to be like, you know what, I'm just gonna, the only thing that will stop this, if I don't say anything, I won't say nothing, and then the thing will quiet down and whatnot. So I eventually had to find other ways to express myself. Writing diaries, writing songs, writing poetry, which is all great things, but still, those were ways to express myself during that time. And so again, something was trying to set me up in childhood, right? Something was trying to, instill whatever in me to get me off track all those years, and so that's the thing, like when you really truly think about that, one of the things, again, throughout these years that, guys been working with me building my relationship, all that stuff, is that I realized that, nothing matters except what you do for God. And I think by the time I realized that, I was like, well, I want to do some stuff that matters. You know what I'm saying? I can be in all the theater shows and be in the movies and whatever, as an actor, whatever the case is, whatever I thought my dreams and whatnot was. But, at the end of the day, it's like, is that going to matter? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, is that going to, now, yeah, I do feel like there's a place for art. I'm not saying nothing about that. There's a place for art. It does help people to, release themselves from their, whatever going on in their life, X, Y, and Z. But this is why I should have my water.
No, you're fine. It's
So
all
they
about
trying to shut me up again, y'all. They trying to shut me up.
it's all about the purpose behind it. Like you can do anything. I mean, and it even in the word it says, whatever you do it as working for the Lord, not man. And I had to pull that a lot in my corporate career and remind me kind of in different seasons of that long career of reminding myself that, Crystal, what you're doing is not for you. Mm-hmm. What you're doing is not for you. And yes, there were plenty of times when I operated just for me, just for the flesh. My listeners know I've been on the path. I have been off the path. I've been so far off the path I couldn't even see it anymore. Yep. And same thing that you are talking about right now, what we come back to realize is that what we need to be doing, what matters, what really has staying power, what really has legacy and lasting impact is what we do for the kingdom. Amen. And that doesn't mean that you have to be an evangelist. That doesn't mean that you have to, run. I laugh all the time. Like, I was actually doing some research, and did you know that 2.83 billion people in the world practice some form of Christianity? Almost a third of the whole world's population will, in a survey at least, would raise their hand to say that they practice some form of Christianity. So if we've got almost a third of the population of the world, that doesn't mean that everyone is running around with their Bible, smacking everybody else in the head with it, right? Like, hey, Jesus is the way. Turn before you burn. Just He has called us to do so many different things. Yes. And our lives, whatever they look like, whatever our vocation is, whatever our lives are meant to show the light of Christ through the way that we live. Yes. We're to be walking examples. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I also believe that, and I don't know if it's something that we just got to keep in our hearts and minds, that everybody's gift and the things that God has created you to do is important. We're different parts of the body, right? I know one day I was doing the Juice Daily Inspiration. I was telling, and I was just kind of sharing, it just kind of stuck with me. But basically, I just was like, imagine if your mouth was where your eyes are. How would you see? Yeah. I was talking to someone else about it, and it was like, we don't think about how important our hind parts are, but I guess when you want to sit down, then you realize,
That's right.
So everybody is important. Every part of the body is important. And so, use your gift for the glory and honor of God, whatever it is. It might be blogging. It might be the street preacher. Who knows? All of those different gifts are important, and all those different, ways to share is important. I mean, I know we don't like the fear way. I was actually talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and she was sharing how she didn't like that aspect, and I get that, and I totally understand that as well. But if fear is going to bring somebody closer to God, then maybe they need to hear that. You know what I mean? Like if the grace and mercy is going to bring people closer to God, maybe they need to hear that. For me, I know it sounds crazy, but I've been saying it a lot lately, and so here it is again, y'all. God brought me near to him using God's sex and love. You know what I mean? Using God's sex in my career, because that's what I was thinking at the time. But he used those things to draw me near to him, because again, me knowing, okay, I have the desire that I want to be married. At the end of the day, how can I get there? How can I make God's wants my want? Like, and all those different things at that time. And so, and these are the things that he used to draw me near to him, so, I think that leads me, I think what you were talking about earlier, when we talk about like other people and whatnot, it's like we appreciate the grace for us. right? We're like so thankful to God. Like, oh, you gave me grace and mercy. You gave me the second and the third and the fourth and the da da da. How many chances you gave me, Lord? Thank you, thank you, thank you. But then you don't extend that to other people. And that's the thing, you're supposed to, you do unto others, you know what I mean? Like, and again, God's way of loving and God's way of doing things, it do seem foreign to us. Because the other thing that has come to me in my studies is that I'm noticing that a lot of little phrases and a lot of little things, even if they are small, there's just a lot of little things that are just like the complete opposite of what God in the Bible says. That is like, and if you start noticing, you'll notice that everything is like the opposite. Like you'll hear narratives, you'll hear like even these random phrases like YOLO, right? You only live once, right? Well, according to the Bible, it says you will live again, and it's eternal.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, just even as small as that, you know what I mean? It's like, and we say that stuff, and we just do it, and we just live life like it ain't no big deal. But it's like, nah, like when you really think about it, like, man, you know what? There's just so many. Like I was talking. She's like, why she keep talking about the juice? But I mean, I do daily, I do it every day. So I have different random messages of things that come to me every day. So I want to say it was last week. I was telling people about like the whole Burning Man festival. Now I never been there. I don't know what all they do, but I do know that I guess at some point they burned this big effigy of a human or something like that. And I'm just like, ain't that weird? Ain't that interesting? You know what I'm saying? You burn.
Why would you do that?
Yeah, like so you burn the something. Now granted, we hope that it's not a real human, right? That you're burning. But still, even if it's the symbolization, simulation, I just made a word. Even if it's a symbol of a human and you're burning it, like where did that even come from? Who thought of that? That sounds demonic to me. That sounds like some devil stuff. But in a day to me, because it's like what you were saying earlier about like anything to take us away from God, anything to, I don't know. It just really, I don't know. They kind of,
it's distraction.
Yeah. It's just like I think the more you get into the Bible and you read what it says and get to know like the way God wants us to do stuff, then I think maybe you'll get, your eyes are open more to like all these different things and stuff. Like, if you think that it's okay to burn something that is a representation of you, which is ultimately the image of God, because we're the right? Because we're made in God's image, right? And then now we're burning something that is made in our image. So what does that say about how we feel about us and God? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's just deeper than we even think or know, I think. Yeah.
That is exactly what I was thinking. We do so many things and we don't even scratch the surface of why we do them, what they mean, how they originated, all of these things, because we don't pause long enough to question it. We are so bombarded from the time you wake up in the morning. What's the first thing you do? You look at your cell phone, right? What's on there? What messages do you have? What notifications do you have? How many people liked your post on Facebook or Instagram or, whatever? How many, all of these different things. How many emails do I have? All of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's constant all day long, constant all day long. The phone, the television, the radio, the this, the that, all of these things. When I think about how people live, and we can do it in look at it two ways. One, how do people actually live during biblical times? Okay, that's like a 1,500-year span, that all of the different books of the Bible were collected and written around 1,500 years. Like there's no electricity, there's no indoor plumbing, there's no, like, that's one of the things that I just scratch my head about. But there's instructions for that, I think, in Leviticus maybe. But there's like all of these things. And so what did they do with their time? Because we all have the same, like, it's still the hours of the daylight and the hours of the night.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what did they do with their time? Well, they spent a lot of it in praise and worship. They spent a lot of it in doing manual labor, different things, because they didn't have all the conveniences that we have now. Yeah. But then if you take that and even just fast forward it to like, how did people spend their time 200 years ago? You know, how did people spend their time before there was a television, before there was an automobile, before there was the blessed internet? And I say that with equal parts fascination and contempt, okay? Because,
I understand it.
you know,
I said
technology's
blessing and a
wonderful.
curse.
Yes, technology's wonderful, but then it's not.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about our intent and our purpose behind it. And so, how are we using our time?
Mm-hmm.
Are we actually paying attention to what we're doing, to what we're saying, to what we're spouting out? I can't tell you how many people I've watched, you know, in the political arena. We're not going to talk about politics, but just how many different instances I've seen of people going from one side to the other, you know, or changing their mind after they've gone in and dug into the facts that they've, you know, that they had an opinion about on something. And that's not just politics. Politics was just the easy thing, you know, that I've seen a lot of, but that's with anything,
Mm-hmm.
with how we view forgiveness, with how we view redemption.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are still people who speak, teach, preach, believe that redemption is only for certain people. That you know, Jesus that Jesus came and that he died and that he allowed himself to be nailed to a cross, that if you will take the time to really think about the excruciating death,
Mm-hmm.
the excruciating physical death that Jesus subjected himself to,
Mm-hmm.
that he said, Father, not my will, but yours be done.
Yes.
Because he didn't have to stay up on that cross. He could have got down. He could have been like, you know what? Nah, I'm out. Y'all fend for yourselves.
Mm-hmm. Which we know we would have did.
Exactly. Which
Like
is
this,
why
I
we
thank
didn't get
God that
asked to
God's
do
not.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
If we would think about that, what he went through, and nowhere in the Bible does Jesus say, I stretched out my arms on the cross for a percentage of the human race.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, I gave my life for a select group of people. That's not what it says.
Right. Right. Yeah, it girl, listen, I know we can go on and on because I said this the other day. I just was like, it's funny how, and it's funny because you said those stats about like how many people they're supposed to be Christians, right? It's funny how people like love Jesus, honor Jesus, right? But not don't acknowledge what he said, nor did. Because it's like, he said that I am the way, the truth, and the life. He said that no one comes to the Father except through me. He said a lot of things where if it's either he was crazy or he was who he said he was, and so, but there's a lot of people that be like, oh yeah, Jesus was a good person or Jesus was a da-da-da, but then you're not acknowledging what he said. Because if he's what he said he was, then he's way more than what you're saying. Then, yeah, everything. I'm in agreement with everything you were saying a minute ago. All of that because, it's just a very interesting thing. Walking this out. I know I am not perfect. You know what I mean? Yes, it's a daily thing. And I guess that's why the words say we need to die to ourselves daily. And everything like that, and just again trust God and everything because. Yes, I don't know. I think.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like there's just so many different things to say where I'm just like, I probably should just wait till you say something else.
You know what? Well, I tell you what, because I feel like we have a lot more conversation in us, and we have a lot more message that needs to be shared. However, listen, people only have the attention span to listen for a limited amount of time. And I totally get that. I totally respect that. So what I want to do is we definitely will have you back on to have additional conversations, and we'll see where else this goes. We'll let God lead and guide us in that. But I want to be able to tell our listeners where they can connect with you.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm on social media as Actress Miracle Sims. People can go to actressmiraclesims.com for my link tree that has access to everything I got going on, my books, the show. I am working on a movie. There's a lot of stuff going on, some good stuff. So that's the main place to go. But in regards to going to see this passion project of mine, God, Sex, and Love, to get daily inspiration on Monday through Saturday by 6 a.m. And, the weekly talk show by 7 a.m. on Fridays. You guys can go to godsexandlove.com. And yes, you are definitely welcome to be on the show. I would love to have you there. We can come chit chat some more and talk about everything that you have going on. And I really appreciate you for, allowing me to come on your platform today.
Oh, it has absolutely been my pleasure. My pleasure. Like I'm in awe, so much gratitude right now for this conversation and this connection. And I will make sure that all of the information to connect with you is down in our show notes. And yeah, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for being here with us today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Hey friend, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's my pleasure as always to be here with you. If what you listened to today resonated with you, if you enjoyed listening to the show, do me a favor. Go ahead and like and subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. Those reviews are so helpful. I can't even tell you how much I appreciate each and every single one of them. And go ahead and share this episode out with a friend. Invite them along for a walk through the Word, and let's enjoy that daily bread together. See you tomorrow.